Hello everybody, this is Count MRVHS and welcome to 4th Age Guides. In this video we are going to be talking about the best 5 factions for a first campaign with 4th Age Total War Dominion of Men. For those of you new to the mod at whom this video is primarily aimed, the 4th Age Total War is a mod for Rome Total War Barbarian Invasion that is set in Middle-earth after the events of the War of the Ring. There are quite a few different factions, quite a few different strategic scenarios for you. And for newcomers, you may be wondering which faction to begin with. So that will be the topic of today's discussion. We are going to consider the unit strength, the economic potential, and the strategic and diplomatic situations of each of these factions and come up with my list of the top 5 factions that are most likely to get you to that all-important victory screen. Coming in at number 5, we have the Kingdom of the Dwarves, one of 2 playable non-Mannish factions in the mod, the others being the Elves. But whereas the Elves face a very difficult economy and a difficult start position initially, the Dwarves can feel much more secure. That security is due not only to the top quality of their excellent units and the ruggedness of their native terrain, but to the diplomatic situation. The Dwarves have a very strong alliance with their neighbors, the Kingdom of Dale, to the south of their starting position, and they also share some nearby territory with the passive but fairly strong Elves, who are not likely to expand or cause them trouble. Whereas in the west, the battles going on for Eriador will likely not concern their holdings over here. Still, the Dwarves are certainly the most challenging of the factions we're going to be considering here today. But if you like teching up, building an extremely strong economy, and almost invincible troops on the battlefield, then you will have a good time playing as the Dwarves. Number 4, we have the Chieftdom of Dunland. A bit of a dark horse candidate for this list, Dunland actually boasts a very strong economy, helped by its incredibly cheap but effective units. You can expect lots of interesting infantry with war cry, fear, armor-piercing, javelins, just about anything you can suspect. Where Dunland tends to be weak is in its cavalry and troops with pretty good defense, armor, or staying power. With natural borders, both to your east, north, and south in the form of rivers and mountains, you're going to be also quite secure in your homelands, free to expand to the sea against rebels, or north against the Dunedainic factions of Tharbad, the Reunited Kingdom, and Dunabar. For number 3, we have the Empire of Harad, one of the largest factions on the map at the beginning of the campaign. Harad is also one of the edge factions. It doesn't have any neighbors to its south, of course, and it has a pretty secure border to its north with the River Harnan. Harad can boast an extremely strong economy from fairly early in the campaign, and it has a decent mix of units. Although individually its units tend not to be terribly strong, it does have some quite good cavalry and some unique specialists like the mighty Mumakil and desert champions or skirmishers. Harad also has quite a few enemies, unfortunately. It has Harondor to its north. It's going to come into conflict with the tribes of Far Harad and Khand to its east, but with a very strong economy and a balanced mix of units, you can usually win the day. For number 2, we have the Kingdom of Rohan, one of the most iconic factions on the map. This faction also has the potential to grow an excellent economy right from the beginning of the campaign. It's got strong units, especially cavalry, and it benefits from a strong initial alliance with the Reunited Kingdom, its neighbor to the south across the White Mountains. Although this alliance is not technically unbreakable, you can usually play your campaign as Rohan in such a way that you don't need to go to war with the Reunited Kingdom. Just make sure that they have some territory to expand to. You do have some initial enemies in your west with Dunland, but with the right mix of units, it's usually a simple matter to defeat them and push on into the natural borders of the Grey Flood and the Eisen. And in the east, you'll find some relatively easy territory to conquer and bring under your rule, since a lot of the lands here all the way into the north regions of Dale are peopled by similarly Northmen such as yourself. And before we get to our #1 slot for the best faction for your first campaign, I want to give an honorable mention shout out to the Reunited Kingdom of Gondor and Arnor. You're probably going to play this faction first anyway, so I may as well get it out of the way. Of course, this is an absolutely iconic faction. You can get into the driver's seat of one of the most famous factions in Middle-earth at a very interesting period in its history. It has defeated the Dark Lord Sauron and has expanded to claim not only the territory in Gondor, but a lot of its lands in the north of the former territory of Arnor. Of course, at this point in the Fourth Age, you'll be facing off against some powerful enemies. To your east in particular, the Kingdom of Dunland, a newly risen shadow cult, is going to give you a lot of problems, especially in the north, so you may find it very difficult to hold on to this territory. In the south, you'll be a bit more protected thanks to the strength of the unique settlement model of Minas Anor, which will give you an excellent advantage in defensive sieges, and the relatively close position of your enemy's settlements, meaning you can quickly go from one to the next and drive them back into Mordor. It's a very interesting, very compelling campaign, but with a tough economy initially and with a good match in terms of your nearby and main enemy, you may be hard-pressed to stick with it in the long haul, especially if southern factions like Harad and Harondor start to come up and trouble your coastline. Definitely worth giving a shot, but it might be better to try one of the other factions in this list for your very first campaign. And #1, the faction that is probably your best bet for your very first campaign in the Fourth Age Total War, my vote goes to the Kingdom of Dale. This is a Northmen faction that is recently coming into its own in the Fourth Age. We imagine that they would have expanded beyond the initial neighborhood of the city of Dale itself to encompass territory stretching down the River Running and the Redwater, the Carnan. This territory is very wealthy in this mod, and so you can quickly build a very strong economy, which will help you go to war against the Easterlings and potentially the Northmen to your south as well. You also have an excellent mix of units as Dale. Of course, you've got lots of iconic archers from the Company of the Black Arrow to your more cheap and numerous barding longbowmen, but you have some great infantry types as well. You'll find black spears particularly useful units of the line, and eventually you'll have hearth troops, great two-handed armored axemen to defeat the more heavily armored enemies you may fight in the later game. Dale is also going to benefit from a strong alliance with the Dwarves to your north, so you can pretty much rely on always having a trading partner in them, and if you give the same treatment to the Elves and other factions around, you can have a pretty easy time of it indeed. The natural rivers and terrain here is going to make conquest pretty intuitive, and you can usually grab enough territory to get yourself in a very secure position early on. Late game, though, you may face some tough challenges as factions in the south consolidate their own territory, and you may be fighting a very large Reunited Kingdom or a Dunabar or an extremely large and aggressive Empire of Harad. So while the early and mid-game may be a breeze, Dale is going to have to pull out all the stops to protect itself against some of those very dangerous foes. Of course, the best choice for your first campaign is the one you're most interested in playing, but these 5 in particular are the factions I think you'll have the most luck with in terms of getting to the end or getting at least into a successful position for your first shot. The Fourth Age Total War has lots of unique mechanics, and the pacing of the campaign is different from a lot of other mods and certainly from the vanilla base game. So for your first shot, it may be good to ease yourself into the campaign, get into the atmosphere of Middle-earth in the Fourth Age, and enjoy yourselves. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I hope you'll stick around into the next videos. Take care, everybody.